I should have known something was off the second my phone buzzed, and I saw Brandon's name pop up on my screen. We weren't exactly friends. Scratch that. We weren't even close to being acquaintances. The only time he ever texted me was to relay messages from Sophia's mother, usually something passive-aggressive about our home being too modern or how I wasn't upholding family traditions. But this message wasn't from Mrs. Caldwell. It was from Brandon, straight to me, and it was as cold as a corporate email. Hey, we're having a small family gathering this Sunday at Mom and Dad's house. It's important. Be there at 3 p.m. It's a surprise, so don't tell Sophia. No, hope you can make it. No, how's it going? Just a direct demand, like I was being summoned to some royal court. My gut immediately twisted. I stared at the text for a long time, the words replaying in my head like an alarm bell I couldn't shut off. A family gathering I wasn't supposed to tell my wife about? A surprise at a house where I'd never once felt welcomed? Yeah, that was weird. Real weird. I took my phone and walked into the kitchen, where my best friend Jordan was sipping a beer at the counter. We had been watching the game, but now I wasn't in the mood. Brandon just texted me, I said, sliding my phone across the counter. Jordan picked it up, skimmed the message, and raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a trap. I exhaled sharply. Right? Why wouldn't they tell Sophia? Because it's about you, he said simply, taking another sip. You sure you want to walk into whatever this is? I wasn't sure at all. The Caldwells had never liked me, but they tolerated me because Sophia had dug in her heels and made it clear she wasn't going to marry some trust fund stockbroker from their country club. I wasn't like them. I didn't grow up attending fancy banquets or networking with CEOs at charity galas. I came from a blue-collar family, built my career from the ground up, and when I met Sophia, I loved her for her, not for her last name. But to them, I was an outsider, a distraction. I had put up with their condescension for years. The smug glances, the thinly veiled insults, the way they spoke about me in third person, even when I was standing right there. But something about this invitation felt different, like they weren't just going to disapprove of me this time, like they were about to make a move. Jordan set the bottle down with a thud. So, what's the play? I clenched my jaw. I needed to see what this was. I typed back a short response. Sure. See you then. No questions. No hesitation. Just enough to let them believe I was walking straight into whatever they had planned. Guess I'll find out, I muttered, locking my phone. Sunday arrived too fast. The whole morning, Sophia was curled up on the couch, flipping through wedding pictures on her laptop. She had a habit of doing that whenever she was feeling sentimental. You okay? I asked, leaning against the doorway. She glanced up and smiled. Yeah, just looking through old photos. It's crazy, right? We've been married 5 years already. I walked over and kissed the top of her head. She didn't know I was leaving soon. Didn't know where I was going. I wasn't about to lie to her, but I also didn't want to worry her. I forced a smile. Yeah, time flies. My stomach twisted. If only she knew what her family was up to. At exactly 2:45 p.m., I got into my car and drove to her parents' house. The Caldwell estate was a monument to wealth. A sprawling 3-story home in Silverwood Heights, the kind of place that screamed old money. Perfectly manicured lawns. A circular driveway lined with imported stone fountains. Grand iron gates that only opened with a security code. I had spent countless weekends here, always feeling like a visitor, a guest in my own marriage. I parked the car, took a breath, and stepped out. As soon as I rang the doorbell, the massive wooden doors swung open, not by a butler, but by Mrs. Caldwell herself. She was dressed like she was attending some exclusive brunch, a pearl necklace around her throat, her expression unreadable. Brandon stood behind her, arms crossed. Lena lingered in the background, pretending to be interested in something on her phone. And Mr. Caldwell? He was already seated in the grand living room, a thick folder on the coffee table in front of him. My pulse kicked up. Something was about to go down. Mrs. Caldwell gave me a thin smile. Come in, dear. I stepped inside, feeling the heavy air settle around me like a weighted blanket. This wasn't a friendly gathering. This wasn't a family meeting. This was an ambush. And I had just walked straight into it. I stepped inside, and the moment the doors closed behind me, I knew I had walked straight into something I wasn't supposed to escape from easily. The air inside the Caldwell estate was always heavy, always filled with the scent of antique wood and whatever expensive candle Mrs. Caldwell had burning to impress guests. But today, the air felt suffocating. The grand chandelier overhead cast its glow on a room filled with nothing but cold, expectant faces. Everyone was already there. Mr. Caldwell sat at the center of the living room like a judge at his podium, his fingers intertwined over the thick folder in front of him. His eyes, sharp and unrelenting, met mine the moment I entered. Mrs. Caldwell, standing next to him, wore that same practiced smile, the kind she always put on before delivering a condescending remark. Brandon was leaning against the fireplace with his arms crossed, smirking like he was enjoying the show already. Lena, Sophia's younger sister, sat on the arm of a chair, her phone in her lap, glancing at me but not making eye contact. And then there were the others, extended family members who rarely showed up unless it was something important. An uncle from out of town. A cousin who never spoke to Sophia but was suddenly present for whatever this was. A council of vultures, waiting for me to react. I stayed by the doorway, my arms relaxed but my jaw tight. I wasn't going to sit. Sitting meant submitting. Sitting meant I was playing by their rules. Take a seat, Mr. Caldwell said finally, gesturing toward the empty armchair across from him. I didn't move. I'll stand. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance? Frustration? Good. Silence stretched for a long moment, and then Mrs. Caldwell spoke, her voice sugary sweet. We appreciate you coming on such short notice, she said. I tilted my head. Do I have a choice? Her smile didn't waver, but I saw the way her fingers twitched. We assumed you'd want to cooperate. Cooperate with what? I asked, letting my gaze sweep the room. I wasn't told what this was about, just that it was important. That was when Mr. Caldwell leaned forward, fingers tapping against the folder on the coffee table. We need you to sign these, he said. I didn't have to ask what these were. I already knew. I stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, and let my eyes fall to the stack of papers he was now pushing toward me. And there it was. The words in bold letters at the top of the page. Divorce agreement. I let out a small, breathy laugh. Are you serious? Mrs. Caldwell sighed like she was exhausted by my inconvenient existence. We've given this a lot of thought, and it's clear that this marriage isn't working. I raised an eyebrow. It isn't working? Or I'm not working for you? Brandon scoffed. Oh, come on, man. Don't make this dramatic. I turned my gaze on him. You mean like ambushing me with a room full of people and shoving divorce papers in my face without Sophia even knowing? That kind of dramatic? That wiped the smirk off his face. I looked back at Mr. Caldwell. Where's Sophia? He didn't answer. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. Where is my wife? Mr. Caldwell exhaled slowly, like a man annoyed that he had to explain himself. She's not here. I nodded once, letting that sink in. So you planned a divorce without telling her. It's for her own good, Mrs. Caldwell said smoothly, as if this were some intervention and not a backroom execution of my marriage. You don't contribute to this family, she continued. You don't respect our traditions. You don't support Sophia's future the way a husband should. This arrangement has been an unfortunate distraction. A distraction. I let the word hang between us, my lips curling into a small, humorless smile. This is cute, I murmured, shaking my head. Cute. Brandon snapped, pushing off the fireplace. What's cute is that you think you belong here. You were a mistake from the start. We're just cleaning it up. I chuckled under my breath. Cleaning it up. Right. Lena shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers tightening around her phone. I caught the small flicker of doubt in her eyes, the first crack in their perfect little united front. I looked back at the papers. So let me get this straight, I said, voice calm. You ambushed me, drafted up divorce papers without my wife's knowledge, and now you expect me to sign them because you said so. It's for the best, Mrs. Caldwell insisted. For who? I countered. Silence. Then, Mr. Caldwell, in his ever-so-patient tone, said, We'd prefer to do this the easy way. I tilted my head. And the hard way? His fingers drummed against the table. Let's not go there. Oh, there it was. The unspoken, or else hanging in the air. They thought they could back me into a corner. That I would break under their pressure, fold like a nobody who had just realized he was being thrown out of a world he was never supposed to enter in the first place. They thought they had power over me. They didn't know I had come prepared. That was when I smirked. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my own folder. A thicker one. Heavier. I tossed it onto the coffee table, right next to their divorce papers. Actually, I said, leaning back, I have a surprise for you too. I watched the way their faces shifted. How Mrs. Caldwell's practiced smile wavered for the first time. How Mr. Caldwell's fingers stilled against the table. How Brandon, ever the smug little snake, narrowed his eyes like he suddenly wasn't sure he was still in control of this conversation. No one reached for the folder at first. It was Mr. Caldwell who finally took it, flipping open the cover with a measured breath. I watched him read the first page, and then the second, and then the color drained from his face. Mrs. Caldwell took it from him next, skimming through the pages so fast her hands started to shake. Brandon grabbed a sheet, scanned it, and his entire expression shattered. "What the hell is this?" he choked out. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Proof." Silence crashed over the room like a tidal wave. They weren't expecting this. They thought they had all the control, that they were leading this conversation. They weren't. I had just turned their perfect little coup into a full-blown war, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. Mr. Caldwell clenched his jaw so hard I thought his teeth might crack. His voice was quiet, but laced with fury. "You have no idea what you've done." I leaned forward, my smirk deepening. "Oh," I murmured. "I think I do." The silence in the room was deafening. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fall. It crashes, shatters, and leaves everyone scrambling to pick up the pieces. Mr. Caldwell stared at the documents in front of him, his hands gripping the pages so tightly that I half expected them to rip. Mrs. Caldwell sat frozen beside him, her usual composed demeanor crumbling as her eyes darted over the text. Brandon, always the first to open his mouth, was completely still, his face drained of color. Lena, ever the quiet observer, clutched her phone like it was the only thing grounding her to reality. I crossed my arms and leaned against the back of the armchair they had so graciously offered me earlier. No snide remarks now. I mused, watching them struggle to process what they were looking at. No smug smiles. No veiled insults about how I'm beneath your family. No one answered. Perfect. Mr. Caldwell was the first to snap out of it, his jaw tightening as he slowly set the folder down on the coffee table, like it might explode if he moved too fast. "Where did you get these?" His voice was measured, but I could hear the underlying panic. I tilted my head. "The same way you got my divorce papers drafted without Sophia's knowledge, I imagine. A few well-placed connections, some thorough digging, and the truth just falls into your lap." I smirked. "The difference is, I actually have something worth showing." Mrs. Caldwell's hands trembled as she flipped through another page. "This is," her breath hitched. "This is ridiculous." "Oh." I raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you shaking?" Brandon finally found his voice, though it was weaker than usual. "This is fake." He spat, though the way he refused to look at me said otherwise. "You think you can just waltz in here and accuse our family of this nonsense? You have nothing." I exhaled a soft chuckle and walked over to the coffee table, tapping the folder with my finger. "That right there," I said, my voice smooth. "That's bank records, email chains, proof of your parents' financial manipulation. The distraction you claimed I was? That was just your cover while you drained Sophia's accounts to patch up your little business failures." Brandon's nostrils flared. "That's a damn lie." I shrugged. "Is it?" I reached into my pocket, pulling out a USB drive, and casually tossed it onto the table next to the folder. "If you'd prefer, I can pull up the audio recordings instead. There's nothing quite like hearing someone admit to their crimes in their own voice, don't you think?" Mrs. Caldwell's breath audibly caught in her throat. Brandon lunged for the folder, but Mr. Caldwell snatched it away before he could so much as touch it. His fingers curled around the edges like he was physically holding his family together. "Enough," he growled. I leaned in slightly. "Oh, I don't think we're anywhere near enough." His glare was sharp enough to cut glass, but I wasn't intimidated. Not anymore. Not when I knew exactly how much power I held at this moment. Mrs. Caldwell looked at me, her expression suddenly pleading. "Matthew, let's be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I laughed, shaking my head. "You all lured me here under false pretenses, shoved divorce papers at me like I was some employee you were firing, and now that you realize you don't have the upper hand, you want to be reasonable." I gestured to the USB drive. "You were willing to go behind Sophia's back to get rid of me, but the second I fight back, you want to negotiate." Brandon clenched his fists. "You have no right to do this." I scoffed. "Oh, I have every right. See, you made a crucial mistake. You thought I was just some clueless idiot who would roll over and take it. You thought you had all the leverage. I gestured around the room. Look at you. Look at all of you. You brought in the whole family for this, planned an entire ambush, convinced yourselves that I'd be too shocked or weak to fight back. I smiled. You underestimated me. Mr. Caldwell exhaled through his nose, gripping the folder like it was a lifeline. What do you want? Bingo. I pushed off the chair, taking my time as I reached for the pen that was meant for me, the same one they had placed neatly next to the divorce papers, expecting me to sign away my marriage like it was a failed business deal. I picked it up, twirling it between my fingers, letting the anticipation settle over them like a heavy fog. Then I looked at Mrs. Caldwell. You said this was for Sophia's own good, right? She swallowed, nodding stiffly. Then I say we let her decide. Her face fell. Mr. Caldwell's knuckles went white against the folder. That's not an option. I shrugged. It is now. Brandon shook his head furiously. She's too. Too what? I challenged. Too smart. Too strong. Too capable of making her own decisions. I tapped the USB again. Because trust me, if you really believed she was too naive to see the truth, you wouldn't have worked so hard to hide it from her. Lena, who had been uncharacteristically quiet this whole time, suddenly stood up. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the tension like a blade. You have proof. I nodded once. She hesitated, glancing at her parents, then back at me. Everything. My lips curled. Everything. She exhaled slowly, looking down at the table, her hands gripping the sides of her dress. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wasn't innocent in all of this, but she also wasn't as far gone as the rest of them. Brandon scoffed. Oh, don't tell me you're actually buying into this. I don't know. Brandon, she cut in sharply, her voice stronger now. Shouldn't Sophia be the one to decide? The room went dead silent. I watched as Mr. Caldwell clenched his jaw so hard I thought it might shatter. Mrs. Caldwell looked like she was on the verge of a panic attack. And Brandon? He looked like he wanted to punch a hole in the wall. I let the moment stretch, savoring the way their perfect little coup was falling apart in real time. Then I spoke, my voice calm but firm. I suggest you call Sophia, I said, stepping back. Because I'm not signing a damn thing until she hears the truth. And just like that, I turned their ambush into a full-blown war. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. The Caldwells were frozen, staring at me like I had just flipped the entire chessboard. And I had. They thought they were in control, thought they had the power to dictate my life, my marriage, my future. They had spent years looking down on me, dismissing me, treating me like an unwanted guest in their perfect little world. But now, I had flipped the script. Mr. Caldwell's hands were still clenched around the folder of evidence I had dropped like a bomb onto their carefully orchestrated plans. Brandon looked ready to explode, his jaw so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Mrs. Caldwell was pale, her fingers trembling as she gripped the arm of the couch, her eyes darting toward the USB drive sitting on the coffee table like it was a ticking time bomb. Lena, however, looked torn. She wasn't speaking, but she wasn't siding with them either. That hesitation was all I needed to know that she was starting to realize just how deep this deception ran. I had them cornered. And now, I was about to watch them crumble. Right on cue, the front door opened. I turned my head just as Sophia walked in, looking confused. Mom? She called out, stepping into the room. Dad? What's going on? The air in the room shifted instantly. I saw Mrs. Caldwell visibly straighten, her expression smoothing into something almost neutral, like she hadn't just spent the last 15 minutes trying to tear my marriage apart. Mr. Caldwell glanced at me, then at his daughter, his mind clearly working overtime to regain control of the situation. Brandon stepped back from the fireplace, his smirk gone, replaced with something more cautious. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched. This was their moment to come clean, to prove to Sophia just how little respect they had for her choices, for her independence, for her ability to think for herself. Would they admit to what they had done? Or would they try to bury it, right in front of her? Sophia's eyes landed on the papers on the coffee table, and she frowned. What's all this? Her mother spoke first. Sweetheart, she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. Why don't you come sit down? We were just having a discussion with your husband. Sophia didn't move. About what? I finally decided to break my silence. About the fact that they ambushed me with divorce papers. I said, my voice calm but firm. Without telling you. Sophia's entire body stiffened. What? Her voice was barely above a whisper. They had everything planned. I continued, gesturing toward the folder her father still clung to like a lifeline. They brought in the whole family, made sure I was alone, and then handed me this. I reached down, grabbing the stack of divorce papers they had shoved at me when I walked in. I held them up for her to see. Because apparently, I'm not fit for this family. Sophia's eyes darted to her parents, her expression shifting from confusion to something else. Something dangerous. Mom. Her voice was sharper now. Her mother sighed, feigning exhaustion, like I was being unreasonable. Like I was causing a scene instead of simply exposing what they had done. Sophia, sweetheart, listen, Mrs. Caldwell started. We just wanted to. You did this. Sophia interrupted, her voice cold. Her mother hesitated. Brandon took that as his cue to step in. Come on, Sophia. You know this was coming, he said, waving a dismissive hand. You had to see it. He doesn't belong here. He never did. I watched as Sophia's entire posture changed. She turned to her father. Did you know about this? Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat, setting the folder down. Sophia, we were just trying to do what's best for you. You have to understand. No, she cut him off. I don't have to understand anything. I have to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly. She gestured toward the divorce papers in my hands. Did you try to get my husband to sign these behind my back? A beat of silence. Then, Mrs. Caldwell tried to smile, her voice soft and manipulative. We were only trying to protect you, dear. Sophia's face went blank. That, she said, her voice like steel, was not my question. Mr. Caldwell exhaled through his nose. Sophia, did you do this behind my back? Silence. And that was all the answer she needed. Sophia nodded slowly, then turned to me. What did you do? She asked. I met her gaze, unshaken. I did what they didn't expect me to do. I walked over to the folder I had brought and opened it. I pulled out a set of documents, flipping through them until I reached the part one wanted. Then I handed them to her. Sophia took the papers, scanning the first few lines, and her face drained of color. She flipped to another page, then another, and then slowly looked up at her father. You took money from me? Her father stiffened. I can explain. No, she snapped. No, you can't. You stole from me. I spoke before they could try to twist the narrative. They've been using your name to fund their bad business deals, Sophia, I said. They've been pulling from our joint accounts for years. Whenever they needed money, they used you as their safety net. Sophia's hands shook as she held the documents. This can't be right. Check the records yourself. I pointed to the USB drive still sitting on the coffee table. It's all there. Every transaction. Every shady wire transfer. Every lie they've told you. Mrs. Caldwell paled. Sophia, you have to understand. We only did this because we love you. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. Love me, she echoed. You tried to destroy my marriage without even telling me. You stole from me. You used me. And you want to call that love? Brandon, still grasping for control, scoffed. Oh, come on, Sophia, don't be dramatic. Shut up, Brandon. He blinked. Excuse me. Sophia turned to face him, her body radiating pure fury. You knew about this, didn't you? Brandon hesitated. That was enough. She shook her head, stepping back like she needed to physically distance herself from her own family. I cannot believe this. She turned to me, her voice quieter now. How long have you known? I exhaled. A couple of months. She stared at me, taking that in. And you didn't tell me? I wanted to, I admitted. But I needed proof first. She swallowed hard, nodding. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the realization sinking in. Her parents weren't who she thought they were. Her brother wasn't who she thought he was. Her entire family had just proven that they saw her not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as a means to an end. She turned back to the divorce papers on the table. Then, she reached for the pen. Her mother gasped. Sophia. Sophia signed my documents. And just like that, the Caldwell empire began to fall. The moment Sophia signed those papers, I swear I could hear the foundation of the Caldwell family's power cracking beneath them. Mr. Caldwell's face went stone white, his fingers gripping the edge of the table like he needed something solid to hold on to. Mrs. Caldwell let out a soft gasp, barely above a whisper, but it was Brandon who snapped first. You can't be serious, he spat, stepping forward like he could physically undo what had just happened. Sophia, You don't actually believe any of this, do you? Sophia turned to him slowly. Her eyes, usually filled with warmth, usually the same ones that had looked at me on our wedding day with nothing but love, were ice cold. You think I don't believe the bank records? She asked, her voice controlled, deadly. You think I don't recognize my own name on transactions I never approved? Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it. He knew there was nothing he could say to explain the evidence sitting right in front of them. I can't believe you did this, Sophia continued, shaking her head. You, all of you used me. Mrs. Caldwell straightened her back, regaining just enough of her composure to try and twist the narrative. Sweetheart, we were never using you. We were protecting you. Sophia let out a sharp laugh, one that had zero humor in it. Protecting me? She echoed. By lying to me? By stealing from me? By trying to erase my marriage without even telling me? Her mother flinched. I watched as Mr. Caldwell exhaled through his nose, his jaw tightening so much I thought it might snap. His face had that calculated stillness of a man trying to find a way out of a losing game. That's when he made a mistake. Instead of apologizing, instead of taking any accountability, he looked directly at me. You planned this, didn't you? He said, his voice low and accusing. You played the victim, but the whole time, you were setting this up. I didn't even blink. I wasn't the one draining my daughter's accounts behind her back. His nostrils flared. You're a snake. I leaned forward slightly. And you're a fraud. The room tensed, the unspoken war between us now fully out in the open. Mr. Caldwell wasn't used to losing. He wasn't used to being exposed. For years, he had been untouchable, hiding his financial disasters behind his prestigious name and the illusion of control. But the moment I threw their secrets onto the table, that illusion shattered. And he hated it. Sophia broke the tension first, turning to her father with a look that made it painfully clear she was seeing him for the first time. Really seeing him. I trusted you, she said, her voice raw. You made me believe I could count on my family, that you had my best interests at heart. Her father opened his mouth, but she cut him off. You knew, she continued, her voice rising. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you thought I was too blind to see it. You thought I'd never find out. Lena, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. I didn't know, she whispered. The words were small, but they carried weight. Mrs. Caldwell turned to her sharply. Lena. I didn't, Lena insisted, looking between them all. I thought you were just, I don't know, moving money around. I didn't know you were stealing. Mr. Caldwell clenched his jaw. It wasn't stealing. Lena scoffed, her voice unsteady. Then what would you call it? Silence. I took in the fractured state of their family, watching as the cracks in their armor spread faster than they could cover them. Then, Brandon snapped. This is ridiculous, he muttered, shaking his head. You're really going to throw away everything for him? His eyes locked onto Sophia with pure resentment, like this was somehow all my fault instead of their own. Sophia didn't even hesitate. I'm throwing away nothing, she said, voice steady. I'm taking back everything you try to take from me. Brandon let out a harsh laugh, turning back toward their father like he was expecting backup, but Mr. Caldwell wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the divorce papers on the table. His hands twitched. His breathing was controlled, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curled against his palm. He was realizing it now. He had lost. For years, he had treated Sophia like a pawn, controlling every major decision in her life under the guise of family duty. He thought she would always fall in line, always defer to their authority. But now, she had made a choice. And it wasn't them. Dad, Brandon said, stepping forward slightly. Say something. Mr. Caldwell didn't answer. I could feel the anger building inside him, but not the kind that explodes. Not yet. No, he was calculating. He was waiting, trying to find a way to regain control. So I made sure he knew there was no way out. You know what happens next, don't you? I asked, watching him carefully. His eyes flickered toward me, cautious. I gestured toward the USB drive still sitting on the table. Everything in that folder? It's already backed up. And a copy? That's already in my lawyer's hands. Brandon's head snapped toward me. You wouldn't. I just smiled. I would. The silence that followed was thick, choking, like the last dying breath of a kingdom before it crumbles. I let the weight of it settle over them. Let them feel, for the first time, what true powerlessness felt like. Then I straightened, picking up the divorce papers from the table, flipping through the signed pages. Thank you, Sophia, I said, slipping them into my folder. Now we're done here. I turned toward the door, but Sophia's voice stopped me. Not yet. I turned back. She was staring at her father, her gaze unwavering. I want you to look at me, she said quietly. Mr. Caldwell finally lifted his head. You built your life around control, Sophia said. You told yourself that if you dictated everything, you'd never lose. But guess what? She gestured to the empty space between them, to the family she no longer belonged to. You just lost everything. Mr. Caldwell's hands curled into fists. Mrs. Caldwell was crying silently. Brandon stood rigid, his jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. Lena? Lena just looked sad. Sophia let out a slow, controlled breath, then reached for the USB drive. I'll let the authorities handle the rest, she said simply. Then she turned to me. Let's go. And just like that, we walked out the door, leaving behind the wreckage of the Caldwell dynasty. As we stepped outside the Caldwell estate, I could still feel the weight of everything I had left behind in that suffocating room. The silence, the shattered illusions, the look on Mr. Caldwell's face when he realized he had lost everything. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Sophia walked beside me, her posture stiff, her hands balled into fists at her sides. I could tell she was holding herself together by sheer willpower alone. She hadn't said a word since she told her family she was leaving. I opened the car door for her, but she hesitated before getting in. Her hands trembled slightly, her breathing uneven. I reached out, gently placing a hand on her arm. Sophia. She turned her head to look at me, and for the first time since she had read the evidence, I saw it, the anger simmering beneath the surface, rage held back by sheer control. I need a minute, she whispered. I nodded, stepping back as she ran a hand through her hair, exhaling sharply. Then, suddenly, she let out a dry, bitter laugh. My own family, she muttered, shaking her head. They thought they could just push you out of my life. Like I was some child they could manipulate. I leaned against the car, letting her get it out. Did they ever even love me? She asked suddenly, her voice raw. Or was I just their investment? I didn't answer right away, because honestly, I didn't know. And I wasn't going to lie to her, not now. I think they convinced themselves that controlling you was love, I said finally. But real love? No. Real love isn't conditional. It isn't about power. It isn't about keeping you in a golden cage. She nodded slowly, pressing her fingers against her temples. Then, the front door of the estate slammed open behind us. We both turned just in time to see Brandon storming down the steps, his face twisted in fury. Sophia, he barked. You can't just walk away from us. I stepped in front of her instinctively, but she was already moving past me, her own anger boiling over. You still don't get it, do you? She snapped, turning to face her brother. I'm not walking away. I'm leaving, and I'm never coming back. Brandon scoffed. You think you can just cut off your family? What are you going to do, Sophia? Be a nobody with him? He jerked his chin toward me, his words dripping with contempt. I felt my fists clench, but Sophia spoke before I could. You don't get to talk about him like that, she said, her voice sharp as a blade. You don't get to act like you're better than him, not when you've spent your whole life hiding behind Dad's money, scamming your way out of responsibility. Brandon's face turned red. You're making a mistake. Sophia's eyes burned with fury. No, I made a mistake trusting you. She turned on her heel, heading straight for the car. I followed, watching over my shoulder as Brandon stood there, fists clenched, powerless for the first time in his life. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the estate without looking back. Sophia didn't say anything for a long time. She just stared out the window, breathing hard. Then, finally, she whispered, "What do we do now?" I reached over, taking her hand in mine. "We rebuild," I said simply. Without them. And just like that, the Caldwell dynasty was dead. Leaving the Caldwell estate was supposed to feel like freedom, like breaking free from chains that had been tightening around both of us for years. But as I drove away, gripping the wheel with one hand and holding Sophia's trembling fingers with the other, I realized something. This wasn't over. Not yet. Because people like the Caldwells don't accept defeat. They don't just let go of control. They claw for it, scheme for it. And if they can't win, they make damn sure everyone else loses too. I glanced at Sophia. She was staring out the window, her expression unreadable. The anger from earlier had settled into something else, something calculated. "Sophia," I said, my voice careful. She didn't turn her head, just kept watching the trees blur past. Yeah. Are you okay? She let out a short, humorless laugh. Okay, she echoed. I don't even know what that means anymore. I squeezed her hand. We'll figure this out. Finally, she turned to me, her eyes dark with determination. They won't stop, she whispered. You know that, right? I nodded. I know. They'll try to turn this around. Spin some story about how I was manipulated, how you tricked me. They'll lie. I finished for her. Sophia exhaled through her nose, her grip on my hand tightening. Then we can't just walk away. I glanced at her, a slow smile creeping onto my face. What are you saying? She turned back toward the window, but I saw the way her jaw hardened. I'm saying, she murmured, that if they want to play dirty, they're about to learn that I can too. Phase 1, financial ruin. The first thing we did was leak everything. Not to the police. Not yet. That would come later. No, we went public first. It started with whispers, subtle rumors spreading through the exclusive Silverwood Heights social circles, where reputation was everything. The Caldwells had built their legacy on the illusion of wealth and power, and the best way to tear them down was to rip that illusion apart. Sophia knew exactly who to talk to, which socialites would be desperate for a scandal, which ones hated her family, but had always been too afraid to speak up. Within a week, stories started circulating about shady business deals, embezzlement, and backdoor financial losses. At first, people dismissed them as gossip. But then, someone got their hands on the real documents. Documents that just happened to find their way into a journalist's inbox. From there, it exploded. The story went viral in their social circles. The once untouchable Caldwells suddenly found themselves under scrutiny. Investors pulling out, clients backing away, business partners distancing themselves. Then came the banks, with their financial empire unraveling. It didn't take long before creditors came knocking. Their assets were reevaluated, and suddenly, all those loans they had taken out, they couldn't keep up. The house in Silverwood Heights, the one they had used as collateral, seized. The luxury cars, repossessed. The once flourishing Caldwell enterprises, collapsing under lawsuits. Sophia read every headline that came out, every scathing article detailing her father's business failures, every news alert announcing that Brandon had been removed from a board position. And every time, she just smiled. Phase 2, Brandon's fall. The thing about Brandon was that he had always been the golden child. The one groomed to take over the family name. The one given everything, protected from consequences. Until now. With his father's company sinking, Brandon found himself exposed. See, while Mr. Caldwell had been embezzling, Brandon had been doing worse. Using company funds for personal expenses. Setting up shell accounts to funnel money into private investments. And unlike his father, who at least knew how to cover his tracks, Brandon was sloppy. It didn't take long for forensic accountants to trace where the money had gone. And when they did, Brandon was hit with criminal charges. Sophia and I were at home when we got the news. I was making coffee when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, read the headline, and then let out a slow exhale. Well, she murmured, setting the phone down. Brandon's been arrested. I raised an eyebrow. For what? She picked up the phone again, scrolling. Fraud. Money laundering. Wire fraud. I chuckled. Busy guy. Sophia smirked, taking a sip of her coffee. Not anymore. And just like that, the golden child was gone. Phase 3, the final nail in the coffin. Mr. Caldwell was next. The moment Brandon was arrested, authorities turned their eyes to him. The forensic audit on his company uncovered years of financial fraud, shady dealings, and unpaid debts. Lawsuits piled up, and one by one, his former allies, business partners, investors, even friends, turned their backs on him. Nobody wanted to be associated with a sinking ship. And soon, Mr. Caldwell was facing a fate even worse than prison. Irrelevance. See, men like him don't fear losing money. They know how to rebuild. What they fear, what truly terrifies them, is losing status, losing control. Mr. Caldwell went from powerful businessman to outcast in less than 6 months. Nobody returned his calls. Nobody invited him to exclusive events. Nobody wanted anything to do with a disgraced man with no money, no business, and no influence. And that was worse than any prison sentence. Sophia and I finalized our divorce shortly after. Not because we didn't love each other, but because we wanted nothing tying us legally to her family. We sat in the lawyer's office, signing the final documents, and when it was over, Sophia smiled. "A fresh start," she said. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. We did it. And we had. We weren't running anymore. We weren't trapped under the Caldwell name, under their control. We were free. A few months later, Sophia and I were sitting at a quiet cafe, watching the world move on. Sophia scrolled through her phone, her lips twitching upward. "Mom's living in a 2-bedroom rental now," she murmured. I chuckled. "I bet she still acts like she owns the country club." "She does," Sophia said dryly, shaking her head. "But nobody invites her anymore." I smirked. "And your dad?" She turned her phone toward me. It was a picture of Mr. Caldwell, standing outside a law firm, looking older, defeated. "He tried to apply for a job," she said. "Didn't get it." I let out a low whistle. "Damn." Sophia set her phone down, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she exhaled and leaned back in her chair. "They did this to themselves," she said simply. And she was right. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they could dictate her life, erase me, control everything. But in the end, they lost everything. And we walked away. Free, victorious, and untouchable. It had been months since we walked out of the Caldwell estate, leaving behind the wreckage of their perfect little world. Months since we exposed the truth, shattered their influence, and let them drown in their own corruption. But the beauty of revenge isn't in the moment it happens. It's in the aftermath. The slow, excruciating fallout as everything they once controlled crumbles around them. The Caldwell downfall. The Caldwells had always been careful, meticulous in the way they crafted their image. The respected businessman, the doting mother, the successful heir, the golden family. But when you take away the money, the reputation, the power, all you're left with is the truth. And the truth was, they were nothing without their illusion of control. Brandon's arrest had been the first domino to fall, exposing his fraudulent accounts, his embezzlement schemes, and his reckless financial decisions that had been propped up by his father's name. With the family business already under fire, Mr. Caldwell could do nothing but watch as his legacy crumbled. Bankruptcy filings, lawsuits, creditors seizing assets, their lavish estate, gone, their country club memberships, revoked, their private accounts, once filled with generational wealth, frozen under investigation. Mr. Caldwell's business partners, the same ones who used to praise him at every gala, shake his hand at every fundraiser, call him a visionary, suddenly didn't know him anymore. He was toxic now, a failure, a disgrace. And people like him, they don't survive disgrace. Mrs. Caldwell, she had been the face of high society, the woman who dictated which families mattered and which ones didn't. But now, she was nothing but a scandal. Once the queen of Silverwood Heights, she had been blacklisted from the very social circles she used to command. Invitations stopped coming. People stopped returning her calls. The same women she used to sip champagne with at luncheons were now whispering behind her back, relishing in her downfall the way she once relished in the suffering of others. And Brandon? He was in prison, facing years behind bars for financial fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. The golden son, the heir, the one who was supposed to carry on the family name, now he was just another criminal in an orange jumpsuit. And when it came time for his sentencing, Sophia and I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as he was led away in handcuffs. He turned once, locking eyes with Sophia. His stare was filled with hate, with resentment, with the fury of a man who had spent his entire life believing he was untouchable, only to realize that the world didn't work that way. Sophia? She didn't flinch. She just smiled. The divorce and the new beginning. After everything, the last step was our divorce. Not because we didn't love each other, but because we needed a clean break. I remember the day we signed the final papers, sitting in the lawyer's office. Sophia glanced at me, her fingers running over the crisp pages of her freedom. "This doesn't feel like an ending," she murmured. I smiled. "It's not." And it wasn't. This wasn't the end of us. It was just the end of them. The end of their influence, their control, their ability to manipulate and destroy. Sophia had spent her entire life under the Caldwell name, a name that had once meant power and status, but now meant fraud and disgrace. By signing that paper, she wasn't losing anything. She was choosing herself. We walked out of that office lighter, unburdened. For the first time in years, we were free. The final act of revenge. You'd think that would be the end of it. That we'd walk away, Let them rot in the ruins of their own making. But there was one last piece to play. Because while their money was gone, their reputation shattered, and their golden son locked behind bars, they still had one thing left to lose. Their dignity. So we made sure they lost that, too. Sophia's last move was simple but brilliant. She told her story. She didn't hold a press conference. She didn't seek out TV interviews or some grand spectacle. She simply sat down, wrote a detailed letter, and sent it to every major publication in the city. It was raw, honest, damning. She told the world about her parents' betrayal, the way they tried to control her, steal from her, manipulate her into believing she was nothing more than an asset to be used. She wrote about Brandon's fraud, about the night they ambushed me with divorce papers, about how they tried to erase me like I had been nothing but a temporary inconvenience. She told the truth, and the world listened. The article went viral, spreading like wildfire. People who had once admired the Caldwells, who had envied their wealth and prestige, suddenly saw them for what they truly were: liars, manipulators, criminals. And that was the final nail in the coffin. Because now, it wasn't just their money that was gone. It wasn't just their business, their social standing, their family name. It was their legacy. The Caldwell name? It wasn't one of power anymore. It was one of ruin. And when the dust settled, when all was said and done, and we were finally standing in the ashes of their empire, Sophia turned to me one night, sitting on our new apartment balcony, and let out a slow breath. "We did it," she whispered. I reached for her hand, lacing my fingers through hers. We did. And as we sat there, the cool night breeze running over our skin, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I realized something. This wasn't just revenge. This wasn't just about getting back at them, making them pay, ensuring they felt the weight of every wrong they had done. This was about freedom. Because for the first time in forever, Sophia wasn't looking over her shoulder. She wasn't trapped in a life dictated by someone else's rules. She was free. And me? I was right there with her. Untouchable. Victorious. And finally free.